Bonjour à tous! Today we're going to talk about what we call verb conjugation. So far you've learned about verbs for the most part in the infinitive form, such as here, parler, which means to speak. You've learned to say things like j'aime parler français, right? I like to speak French. But what you haven't learned a lot of yet is actually saying I speak French, or he speaks French, or they speak French. When we take the verb out of the default form, which is the infinitive, and put it into the I speak, you speak, he speaks, etc., that's called verb conjugation. It's basically taking the verbs and putting it in the various forms. And I want to show you how to do that in French. Before I do that, though, in English this is really easy, right? We only have two forms. There's I speak and he or she speaks. We add the S to it. But in French, there's like 5 or 6 different forms for each verb. That's why this type of skill, it comes really naturally to us in English because there's only 2 different forms. But in French, we have to really focus on the ending of the verb. So here we go. When I have an ER verb or ER verb, what we do is the first thing when we're going to conjugate it is we chop off the ending, which is the ER part. So I'm just going to kind of cross those out. And then from there, I'm going to list my subject pronouns, which are je, tu, il or elle. That would be he or she. Je means I, and tu means you, the informal you. And we have nous, which means we. Vous, that's the plural you, like y'all or you guys, but it's also the formal you if you're talking to an adult or a stranger, someone you don't know well. And then il or elle, plural. Notice I didn't say ils, we don't pronounce the S. I would just call it il, plural. Il, elle means they. So after that, we take the stem of the verb, which is everything up there that's not crossed out. So that's the P-A-R-L. And we type that, or write that. And I'm going to just copy and paste that right now, since I'm on a computer and I can do that. So we've got the stem of the verb. And then from there, this is when we focus on the endings. This is kind of the part you have to memorize. So to say that I speak, it's je parle. I just put an e there, and the e is silent. It's not parler like the infinitive is. It's parle. Je parle. Tu parles. That means you speak, or it can mean you are speaking as well. Il, elle parle. Just like the je form, that takes an e. Notice how the je, tu, and il, elle forms all sound the same, even though the tu form has the s. We don't pronounce it. Je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle. Moving over to the plural side of the chart. Nous parlons. That means we speak or we are speaking. So the ending is ons, it makes an on sound. Nous parlons. Vous parlez. This is easy to remember what it sounds like because it's just like the infinitive up here. Okay, parler, parler. So an ER or an EZ have the same sound basically. And then the plural is il parle or elle parle. What's interesting about the plural one is it sounds exactly like the singular. What I mean is on the left hand side we have il parle, and then over here il parle. In pronunciation it doesn't sound any different, but if I'm using the plural forms I have to use the ent ending. That's basically how you conjugate a regular ER verb in French. So I'm not just saying to speak, but we are speaking or I am speaking. And it can be used for any other verb that ends in ER that's a regular verb. There are tons of them. Manger, étudier, écouter, things like that. One thing I will mention though is that if the verb begins with a vowel, such as étudier, which means to study, well, if I want to conjugate it for the je form, say I am studying or I study, we'll take off the er, and do you remember what we have to add back on for the je form? It is the letter E, and it's pronounced étudie. So normally we would have je étudie, right? But here's the trick. When we have je followed by a vowel or a vowel sound, we make a little contraction. We call this elision in French. We take off the E of je and make an apostrophe. And therefore we have j'étudie. It all blends right together. The French like to do that because it sounds better than je étudie. J'étudie just goes right together. It means I study or I am studying. And you may have seen this too when people talk about where they live. They would say j'habite. You might have asked yourself, why the J apostrophe? Why not je habite? Well, like I said, if the next word starts with a vowel or a vowel sound, which in this case H counts as a vowel sound because it's completely silent. That's why we do the J apostrophe. So it's not je habite, but j'habite. Notice how there's absolutely no pause between the J apostrophe and the rest of the word. And then later on you're going to be getting into other types of verbs and conjugating them. There are irregular verbs that follow no pattern like this one. You just have to memorize each of them. And then there are also some regular IR verbs and RE verbs. So there are really three groups of regular verbs: ER verbs, RE verbs, and IR verbs. And I'm going to show you a little chart here with a couple of examples. So here I have vendre conjugated. Vendre means to sell, kind of like the word vending in English. It's a way to help you remember it. And so this is an RE verb. There are other RE verbs that follow the same pattern, and the conjugations are different. Here we have je vends, tu vends, il vend. Notice that the endings, the s, and then nothing. And then nous vendons, vous vendez, and ils vendent. Those are just like the ER verbs that I just went through. The plural endings are the same, but the singular endings are different. The je, tu, and il form. And then IR verbs, they're a little tricky. Choisir is a good example. Choisir means to choose. But if I want to say I choose or I am choosing, it's je choisis. So I always take off the ending, whether it's RE or IR. In this case, IR verb ending is IR. And then I add back on the endings I have underlined here. So we have je choisis, tu choisis, il ou elle choisit. And then the plural ones are a little tricky. Nous choisissons. Okay? One S in French in the middle of a word usually makes a Z sound, choisis, whereas two S's makes an S sound. Choisissons, okay? Nous choisissons. Vous choisissez. You all are choosing, or you choose. And then ils choisissent, or elles choisissent. Just like I showed you in the example with parler, the UNT ending is absolutely silent. So I ended after the S sound. Ils choisissent, elles choisissent. If you'd like any practice with conjugation, let me know. It's an absolutely critical concept to get in French 1. In fact, if you don't get it, we've got to work with you to help you get it, because you're going to struggle with anything beyond this point. You could even email me some examples of sentences and say, hey, Mr. Springer, am I doing these right? And I'd be happy to give you feedback on anything.